Hello, and welcome to another episode of When Women in Business. I'm your hostess, Frederica Hutchinson, and I'm here in the studio, but video conferencing my new friend, Miss Lakeisha Bradley. Hi, Lakeisha.
Hello, Frederica. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Well, our topic today is on seasonal depression. As most of my viewers know, I'm trying to be more intentional about my mental health, and I'm trying to um, and that's actually how I met my guest here, Miss Lakeisha. We were actually attending a virtual conference titled "I'm Not Built to Break: Combating Grief and Seasonal Depression." Lakeisha, I know you remember that. It wasn't that long ago. That was a really good conference.
It really was. And I joined the conference two reasons. One, as a still practicing social worker, I need CEUs, and two, also wanting to learn new ways on how to stay on top of my own mental health.
Exactly. Well, Miss Lakeisha Bradley is originally from Queens, New York. She currently lives
Hmm.
in Indiana. She received her bachelor's of science of social work in 2016 and her master's of social work in 2017 from Indiana State University. Lakeisha is currently a full-time lecturer and a part-time crisis specialist. She's a licensed social worker in Indiana. Lakeisha has recently taken a break from being a full time therapist at a community mental health center specializing in clients with severe mental illness. And she enjoys spending time with family, writing poetry and short stories, staying up on current events, watching new stand up comedy. I'm right there with you, Lakeisha, and specials
Hmm.
on Netflix, that too. Traveling in her current newlywed season. Lakeisha is one of few black social workers in her community and one of a small group of educators in social work departments across the country. Her passion is to encourage black women to find their voice and blaze their path. Yes, ma'am.
Man.
Yes. So again, welcome, Miss Lakeisha. I know we just kind of introduced you, but just share a little bit more about yourself with our audience, please.
So I want to touch a little bit on um, the taking the break from being a full time therapist. So I reached a point of complete burnout.
Oh,
There were a number of life events that happened. Work was stressing. I had a huge loss of my stepfather in 2020, I'm sorry. And then it just kind of was like a snowball effect from there. In April of 2020, I had three family deaths 5 days apart um, of each other. And with the pandemic and everything happening, I was just like, yeah, I'm not my best self, therefore I can't give my best self to the clients that I'm serving. And so it was best for me to just pull myself back before I damage a client. And then furthermore, damaging myself any more than I already was. And then I transitioned to a new role of educator and feel rejuvenated.
that is awesome. I was actually thinking about it. You just answered two of my questions, and one of them was, how did you go from therapist to educator, which I think you just answered. And my second part was, why did you decide to be a therapist to start with?
It's something I've always done in essence, without getting paid for it. In my friend groups, I've always been the go-to person for advice, the person that listens, the person that can give unbiased commentary, if you will, or advice to others, and a safe space for people. People in my friend groups have always known that whatever they share with me will die with me, unless they share it with somebody else. But I'm not sharing it. And so it's
That's
something that I've
important.
always done. And then I was working in corporate America, living my best life, making really good money, and it just wasn't fulfilling. I just didn't feel I didn't feel that there was purpose, and so I wanted to do something that I felt had more impact. And a number of another number of life events happened, and I didn't finish my collegiate degree early in life, and then I moved to Indiana and decided, why not go back to school and become a therapist and actually get paid for what I've been doing since a teen.
Well, I hear so much wisdom in the reason why you chose to be a therapist, as well as the
Mhm.
reason you chose to temporarily or to do it, more on a
Mhm.
part-time basis. To me, and I don't think a lot of people understand that, um, when you are tired or you can't focus on that, or or you're overwhelmed or whatever it is you're going through,
Mhm.
sometimes you have to be willing to step away and also try something else. That was the reason why my initial question was, what made you decide to go from therapist to educator? Because so many times, I know myself, I can use as an example. I've
Mhm.
been afraid to try new things because it's kind of like, well, you have your master's in this area, but just because you have your education in one area, you might have multiple gifts or you might have multiple interests. So I think extremely impressed at the fact that you were able to take that leap of faith and to move into your passion.
It's a transition, I'll tell you that. It's definitely different. There's still some aspects of what I did do primarily as a therapist that I transfer into what I do with students. Um, because as you know, educators are just more than the person in the class teaching the students the content of whatever the topic is. A lot of times students are sharing with you varying things, mental health issues, challenges with identity, or racial situations that are happening on the campus. I teach currently at a predominantly white institution, um, and that comes with its own things, just as an HBCU comes with its own things. So it's much more than just teaching the content. It's not a 9 to 5 at all. Sometimes it's evenings and weekends.
I think
Um,
therapy is also so.
Yes. So I wasn't thinking of the transition of getting away from the 9 to 5, but just getting away from the kind of listening to people express everything that they're dealing with for 10 hours a day, because I worked 4 tens. Initially, I was like, oh, let me work 4 tens. Maybe that'll help with the burnout. And then I went to 3 tens. I was trying to do everything, but just leave altogether. And then I just got to a point where, okay, I'm snapping way more than I would be. So it's really time to just leave it. And and God works in his own way.
Yes.
And sometimes when we don't follow
He'll
his
make you.
instruction, he
Yes.
pushes us
He will
in the
push
direction.
us and make it uncomfortable. I'm so glad you said that. I was just about to say it, that, sometimes, um, particularly when we don't see the vision or know the purpose, he does.
Mhm.
And he'll start giving us signs. And I've been one of those people that I'll just be like, oh, he ain't talking to me. He's
Right.
talking to me. He will make you so uncomfortable. He'll make you so uncomfortable that you have to move. And 9 times out of 10, it's for our benefit. Well, 10 times out of
Exactly.
10, actually, it's for our benefit. We just actually
Exactly.
have to embrace it. So, Miss Lakeisha, again, I'm so grateful to have you on the show.
Thank
And for
you.
those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome to Win Women in Business, where we talk about all issues pertaining to women. Again, I'm Frederica, and I am the acronym queen. And I take a word and we break that word down letter by letter. And that's what we're about to do. Our word today is seasonal. And if you will, please join us not only today, but also next Wednesday at 4 p.m., where we will have our second part. The whole episode is on seasonal depression. So we're going to start with the word seasonal today. So again, don't please join us next Wednesday at 4. Also, make sure that you share, comment, like with your friends and family. So let's see. I guess we're just going to jump right into our word today. And our first letter is S in our word seasonal. So for me, Lakeisha, I chose the word struggle because a lot of people struggle with depression. And I sometimes I have two words when I get really excited. So my second word is support network. So
Okay.
sometimes when you're struggling with depression and you don't know what to do, first thing we would like to say is go get you a good mental health specialist or someone. Talk to
Mhm.
your doctor. Talk to someone. And also, in addition to that, again, find that support group. That can be your friends, that can be your coworkers, your family. Find someone that you can trust. And like Lakeisha said, someone that you can talk to and you don't have to worry about them repeating everything that you just said.
Yeah, 'cause it's completely important. I like those two words. Stigma is another one.
Ooh, I love it. There's
Um,
so much stigma associated with
I
mental health.
Yes, and there's layers to the stigma too. So you have your general stigma of how the world views mental illness, and then you have the cultural stigma, depending on, and then the racial stigma. So you depending on what your culture is, some people don't think talking to a therapist is,
No problem.
of whatever God they serve, right? And then you have certain uh, racial ethnical communities that will say, what happens in this house stays in this house. We don't we don't talk to anybody about anything that's going on, or suck it up buttercup kind of thing. And those things are not helpful. Many of us who deal with mental illness personally, whether it's depression or anxiety, bipolar disorder, whatever it is, um, if if you keep it inside, it's going to get worse.
Kind of
Like
like a
that's
volcano. It's like it's gonna come out
yes,
eventually. So it's better just to slowly, gradually talk about it.
exactly. And it'll show up in ways that you don't even
Hmm.
realize are being impacted.
Yes. Before we get too deeply, I do want to give you guys a disclaimer. Um, Although Miss Lakeisha is a therapist, I am not. I'm not a doctor. And we will simply be sharing our views. Again, like we said earlier, please seek additional help if you need to. I do this because I have suffered with anxiety, depression, post traumatic stress. I've shared with Lakeisha, as a matter of fact, when we were in that breakout room, that was one of the things I was talking about. I lost my daughter, Naomi Love, 12 years ago, and she was only 7 years old, and she wasn't sick. So it was just like a major shock to my core, and it took me literally almost a decade to even start processing it. And Lakeisha, you and I talked the other day. That's something else I like to bring up is sometimes society, when you talk about stigmas and the biases of the world, sometimes they say, oh, shit. Matter of fact, I didn't mean to cut myself off, but one of my supervisors when I was working, he actually told me, he said, it was 2 weeks after I lost my daughter, you're not over it yet?
Oh no.
Yes. And I was like, it's been 10,
Boy,
12 years, and you'll never be over the loss of someone you love. However, you can find strategies and ways to cope, and that's what a lot of people are not aware of, and that's what we're going to primarily be talking about today, are different not just techniques, but things we've used, and things
right,
that you might choose to try as well.
right. That's our personal journey, um, overcoming some of these challenges. So
Yes. So some people, Lakeisha, might not know the difference. We're talking about depression here, but one of the things as I started to talk about depression, I was wondering like, is there really a difference between grief and depression? And so I went back through our packet that we had gone through, and of course there
mhm.
is a lot of similarities, but there are also some differences as well. You can speak to it, or I can, with my limited knowledge, speak to it, whichever way you prefer.
There is a difference, and like you said, the packet that we got highlighted the similarities, and sometimes I think when we have a loss, we don't recognize that sometimes what we're feeling is beyond grief, and it's easy to ignore it. Um, just like I said earlier, I lost my stepfather in 2020. So like at the height of the pandemic, um, there was no closure, if you will, because there were no funeral services happening. Like there was, family couldn't get together, and it was so abrupt. Like my mom called me that morning and said he was having some pains and she wanted me to come take him to the hospital, because he was stubborn. He didn't like going to the doctor if he didn't have to. And literally, the minute she called me and the tone in her voice, I knew something was bad. So I prayed before I left my house to prepare me for whatever I'm going to walk into. And she lived like maybe 7 minutes from me. And by the time I got there, he had already passed. And so I go into, fixer mode, because that's what I
Yes.
naturally do.
I was thinking
You
warrior
know,
mode. Yes.
yes, calling some of his family members, and making sure my mom was okay. All of my siblings were there except two. My nephew took it really hard because they were really close. And I say he's my stepfather because he wasn't my biological father, but he was a father to me, from the time I was 11. He's been there for everything, every up, down, childbirth, graduation, everything. He took me to buy my first car. He was at all the pivotal moments that a daughter would want her father to be there. Um, and I had already told him that I wanted him to walk me down the aisle. Um, and then, we didn't have any closure, didn't really process. So I was numb for a long time. And then a year and a half later, I'm like, okay, this is more than just grief. And then I recognized that I was dealing
Yes.
with depression and anxiety about it, on top of the anxiety with the pandemic. And then it just kept getting worse because I just kept, we pushed through. We have to go to work. I have children. Planning a wedding. It was just like so much other things that I was doing. And then when I realized it was depression, I was like, okay, I need to do something. And one of those things was removing myself from practicing as a full-time therapist. My sleep was horrible. My mood was toe up, to say the least. Um, I just knew I wasn't myself, and I couldn't really get to processing the loss because there were several more losses after that. Literally, probably 7 or 8 after that. And I'm still on that journey, trying to figure it out. I keep saying I need to get a therapist because every therapist needs a therapist. And I'm procrastinating. Like,
Well, just so you know,
I'm
Lakeisha,
procrastinating.
I literally just got a new therapist last week, had my first session, and it does make a difference. And one of my acronyms, I was going to discuss this, but I'll go ahead and discuss a little bit. And when we get there, I'll repeat it. But one of the things that I've tried to do is be intentional about my mental health. And so I'm so glad you're talking about this. And I was going to name a few of the similarities that I noted. Like a lot of times with from grief to depression, both of them you might feel sad or in despair. You might cry. Your energy might be low. You might lose weight, but then there's some people who gain weight. I gained weight.
Me too.
You might have poor quality of sleep. Feeling of loneliness. Not only loneliness, sometimes there's isolation that comes along with it. You might not be able to concentrate. There are so many symptoms, and if you don't know, you don't know. And that's the reason we do this show, is to try to, for me, one of the things is I'm always constantly trying to educate myself, because I don't want to go through it again. And I've been there so long, and I did tell myself I'm not going back. I'm not going back. And not only am I not going back, I'm going to pull as many people with me as I can, Lakeisha. So I appreciate you not only sharing your story as a professional, but also your personal story as well today. So we are going to do a quick commercial break, and I want to thank our sponsor today, which is my store, Tags and Co. Touched by an Angel Gift Shop and Consignments. Ed, what did you say the name of that's called Saturday? It is Small Business Saturday. So if you are in the local area, or if you would like to support my shop, please feel free to come on in. We're at Pickens, 225 Punkintown Highway, at the Market at the Mill. So thank you again, Tax & Co., for sponsoring today's show. We are going to dive into our next letter, which is the E in our word seasonal, for seasonal depression. And for me, and we talked about this a little bit too, Lakeisha, endless possibilities. Because when I was depressed, or when I've gone through moments of depression, I have felt hopeless. So I chose endless possibilities, because I want to remind myself that there is a whole world, not just for me, but for you guys, similar to Lakeisha. Sometimes, one area might not feel comfortable, but then you can always switch and change careers or jobs, or states for that matter. So, Lakeisha, what are you thinking over there for the E?
Um, I like endless possibility, but I'm gonna add to that energy.
Ooh, love it.
Um, and I say energy because what we put our energy into
Yes.
will either grow, or what we avoid putting our energy into and destroy us.
I always say what we
Um,
focus on is where our attention's going to be drawn. Yes.
mhm. Because sometimes, when you're depressed, you're hopeless, and then oftentimes you'll put energy into all of the things that are not good for you. You're eating poorly. um you might add some alcohol or some drugs in there. We've all had that moment where, well, I'll say some of us, but I'll speak for myself, where you just like, I just need a drink. If I just I just to get through, I just need a drink right now. That'll help me feel better. But actually it doesn't. It just numbs it, and it actually makes it worse. Or you just putting energy into people who you shouldn't be around, and avoiding those who are reaching out to you, who are calling you, who are texting you, who are avid prayer warriors, who in other times have gotten you through things. And so what we put our energy to can grow, especially if you're putting it into positive things.
Yes. So our next letter in the word seasonal, for seasonal depression, is A. And for me, Lakeisha, I put awareness. And that's one of the things I think you and I have both been talking about today, is we were aware of our condition, or our mental health, how we currently felt, and we chose to make some steps to help us process it. So I think awareness is so important. And I want to say this also, because we kind of talked about the similarities and differences between grief and depression, but there's also a difference between depression and seasonal depression. And the main thing that kind of distinguishes the two, from, again, my limited understanding, is that the seasonal tends to happen at a particular time. It could be like a season change. It could be something of that nature. So what do
Yes.
you can go ahead, Lakeisha.
So awareness is important. Knowing yourself, like, when your mood is changing. um, when, like I said, I was snapping, and I'm just like, okay, somebody just walked into the room, why am I snapping? I just heard them breathe, and it annoyed me.
There
So
are
I was
some
like,
people
okay,
like that.
Yes. So I was like, okay,
I mean to encourage that.
this is not me normally.
Yes.
So let me start to do some self evaluation to kind of see like what's triggering this. And typically seasonally, and I'll say this from a professional standpoint, between Halloween and
Is it April?
probably Valentine's Day
Okay.
is where I have seen the most um the influx of clients coming in with varying problems. Because in the summertime, the sun's out, everybody's outside, especially, this past summer, people were outside, um, because of, a lot of things got lifted with the pandemic. So, people are having fun and they're living lives. You're not thinking about all of the things that are probably bothering you. But then once the holiday season comes, usually
Hmm.
Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's Eve, it hits people hard because those are the times where if they're grieving somebody, that's heightened because they miss that person. That person's not there. I was When I was going out to Sam's Club earlier, my husband told me, he was like, "Be careful because it's crazy out there in the stores." I instantly got an attitude because I'm like, I don't have the patience to deal with anybody and their shenanigans this holiday season. And also for me, Thanksgiving was one of my stepfather's favorite holidays. Christmas is his birthday. And so this season, I know I will be more agitated than normal because knowing that this is his time of the year, but he's not here to kind of for us to do the things that we would normally do if he
Well,
was.
Lakeisha, from a professional standpoint, what would you recommend someone do to kind of combat that? If you, and I think we've kind of, that's what we've been talking about the whole time is, we're going to trainings, we're seeing therapists, we're, doing those. Do you have any other advice as far as how to help people cope when you do recognize seasonal depression?
I think when you're connecting the grief to it, I think look to do things in honor of the person that you lost,
Yes.
that you love. So and I still have to remember, my mom lost her husband, right?
Yes.
Which I know there are points where she hasn't even really processed that yet either. And my mom's not she's not gonna tell us. She's from the old school of, if you don't see it, it ain't happening kind of era. So we haven't seen her have her moments. She says she's had her moments, but every year since he's passed, um, we've created like themes for Christmas. So this year's theme is everybody's gonna pick their own cartoon character and wear that to the house. Um, my son has taken over making my stepfather's macaroni and cheese. Um, and so we make sure that we're all together around that time, and we share stories of him, and we crack jokes and all of those things. So we try to make it a happier moment, even though we're still sad he's not there. So I feel like doing things in honor of that person
Yes, and that's
can
exactly what I
help.
was just gonna say is doing it in honor. To be honest, that's the reason I started the podcast. Well, we originally started a podcast for women business owners, hence the name. However, it's since kind of transitioned, even though the name has stayed there. And I
Mhm.
make it a point every episode to talk about my daughter Naomi Love, who I mentioned earlier, who died in a car accident. But for me, knowing that her life still has purpose has helped me with my grieving process. So you're 100% right. We have a few minutes and a few more words left, so we're gonna go through those. The O is our next letter. I hope I didn't skip one. The O is our next letter in the
I think
word
you missed the
seasonal.
S.
Did I skip an S? Oh, I actually
Yes.
had. Yes, I had. So anytime I have a what I consider a negative word, I always try to support it with a positive. So my negative word, even though it's not that negative, is silence. So in seasonal depression, a lot of time we become silenced, and
Mm,
so I want to encourage people to shake it up a little bit. But I want to kind of have a disclaimer with that. It generally needs to be gradual. If you're going to introduce something new to your
yes.
life, you need to, I would say, replace something versus just totally, when you're already in a depressed state and you lose something, it's just like another loss. So try to pick something up. So shake life up a little bit. And what I mean by that is, start going out with friends, start trying a new food, try traveling to a place you've never been to. I wouldn't recommend that you try to do a whole lot of things at one time, though. What are you thinking, Miss Lakeisha?
I
Mrs.
agree.
Lakeisha?
I know. Um, when I'm depressed, I'm impulsive.
Most of us
I'll just,
are.
yeah,
Yes.
just do things. You spending money that you don't really have. You just kind of not thinking things through. So I agree with kind of gradually doing things, because you also don't want to overwhelm yourself. So if you've been isolated, don't ask me any questions. I don't have anything for you. Figure it out yourself. I'm not the fixer today, and so I will push myself to do things, because ultimately I know it's going to benefit me. You know, I don't like tomorrow. I'm supposed to go out for Thanksgiving. Do I really want to go and be in a house full of people? No, I don't. However, I know that group of people is going to have me in stitches with laughter the whole entire time. I know the food is going to be good. So I just think of those things versus the fear of, me just not being in the mood or not wanting to drive or anything I can conjure up
Well, I'm gonna.
in my brain to smile and I'm gonna have a good time and be like, okay, I gotta build this back up for Christmas.
So the next letter in our word seasonal is O, and for me, I wrote down ounce of prevention, which we again have been talking about the whole time. Just trying to learn ways to do self care, and I don't know if it was your Facebook page or someone I recently viewed. It said that true self care is not just salt baths and chocolate cake. It is living a life that you don't constantly have to escape from, and I want to give that 2 or 3 snaps. Love it. What are you thinking, Lakeisha? Was that your
Yes,
page?
I saw that somewhere too, and I was like, "This is so true."
Yes.
It could have been. It could have been because I know I saw that. I saw it somewhere, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is true. This is so true." I want to add overcomer to the O because you absolutely can overcome depression. Uh, um, you can overcome most challenges and obstacles with the right strategies and the right support. It's not a dead end because you're depressed.
That is true, and that kind of leads into my end for the word seasonal, which is now and new. I did too. I cheated again, but yeah, yeah. So at the beginning of, of
Yes,
of the year, my end, I said my end is always going to be now because it's never too late. Sometimes we look, in particular, as you start to get older, and you think, oh, it's too late, but that's why I love the fact that you said you were able to go from one career to the next because it's never too late and it's never too late to try something new. I'm also going to do the A and the L, and then I'll let you
absolutely.
comment on any of those letters and also
Okay.
allow you to do a final word as well. So for the A, I have attempt to identify, and that's identify areas in your life that you need to change. And it kind of goes along what we were just saying. And then lastly, I mentioned this at the top of the hour. The L in seasonal is learn to be intentional, live an intentional life. Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to you, Miss Lakeisha. Would you like
Yes,
to respond, comment, or add to any of those?
absolutely. I agree with I agree with all of those, especially the end. Um, New is scary.
It is.
However, new
It's
is it bad?
necessary sometimes too.
Um, yes,
Necessary. That should be our
necessary.
Okay.
Necessary.
So So we are going to wrap it up. We appreciate you guys. If you have not had a chance to watch this episode, please go back and watch the episode, share, like it, and catch us on the next episode too. This is a two-part. We talked about seasonal this time. We'll be talking about depression next week. Catch us next Wednesday at 4. And until next time, and as always, we want to remind you guys to stay grounded, be blessed, and be you.